Breaking news at this hour, the son of Hollywood power couple Rob and Michelle Reiner returns to court for the arraignment in the case of murder of his parents. You see him right there behind glass. He pled not guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder.
She looked directly at him and asked if he understood that and if he was okay with it. And he looked back at her and calmly said, yes. So that was interesting there, because I think what many people were wondering would perhaps happen here is that we would get some questions about mental competency, or maybe his public defender would ask for mental competency exams. Right. That did not happen today.
It's interesting that since Alan Jackson's departure, that's Nick Reiner's former lawyer, we are seeing the 30-something for the first time. In fact, we're seeing him for the first time since he was arrested in mid-December. Now, that is one of the benefits of having the best defense money can buy. Now barely 2 months have passed since the murders, and yet Nick looks like he has aged 20 years. Not that it's rocket science, but TMZ are confirming what seemed to be the reason Jackson walked. And it's also the reason I think he seemed to deny, if I understood correctly. According to TMZ, Jackson withdrew from the case because of an undisclosed disagreement. But now Nick Reiner is on his own as he faces murder charges. TMZ has learned his siblings are no longer footing the bill for his defense. They're no longer paying for his defense. Sources connected to Romy and Jake with direct knowledge have told TMZ that they have no plan to pay for a private criminal defense lawyer.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head,
Now, I don't put too much stock in TMZ's reporting, especially their recent ridiculous parading of so-called ransom notes sent to them in the Nancy Guthrie case, as if each successive ransom note has got to be the one, instead of each successive note showing that the previous one is invalid, that they're all invalid, and also showing what scammy, scummy coverage we've been getting in the Nancy Guthrie case. But on the issue of Nick's siblings not footing the bill, this lack of apparent financial support seems to correlate to a lack of actual support. And that's the most damning thing, I think, of all in this case. It's that we know that his own siblings haven't visited Nick once since the murders. They are not appearing in court with Nick to show some kind of solidarity. And it's not clear whether any family members have shown support, or indeed who, if anyone, has visited Nick. But I suspect a jury will be taking their cues in a big way from Nick's siblings. After all, who knew Nick best? Besides his parents, Romy was the only family member who sort of dealt with Nick and probably saw him on a day-to-day basis and knew precisely the bullshit that was going on behind closed doors. Interestingly, though, there is a little room for contradiction even in their stance against their brother, because what we also know is that his siblings oppose the death penalty for Nick. According to Deadline, as he has before, District Attorney Hochman today outlined the process by which his office would evaluate whether Reiner could get the death penalty. Taking no questions, the DA offered no indication of his or his office's thinking on the matter, except that they are thinking about the death penalty. Hochman said that not long after Reiner's arrest, this is really interesting, he and his team wanted to meet with the family, especially the oldest brother Jake and sisters Romy and Tracy. By the way, Tracy is the adopted daughter from Reiner's first marriage with Penny Marshall. And they wanted to meet with the siblings to gauge their opinion, specifically on the death penalty as a punishment for the middle child, for Nick. But the family has made it clear to prosecutors that they do not want to go down that road. And that might be for 2 reasons. One is the sheer length of time these capital offense cases can take, these death penalty cases. And also, think about it, Scott Peterson is no longer on death row, but he was on death row in California for absolute ages. The other reason is probably a limited amount of leniency for their sibling. They don't want to see their own flesh and blood put to death in the same way that they didn't want that fate for their parents. Now, he also looks like he was able to understand the fairly complicated legalese he was presented with in court. He looked at the judge, he listened, and he answered appropriately. Let's listen to that part right now.
29th, 2026 as a 0 of 30 calendar days.
Yes.
And may I take a waiver from your client at this time?
Yes,
Mr. Reiner, you are entitled to a speedy preliminary hearing. That's a preliminary hearing within 10 court days and 60 calendar days of your arraignment. Your arraignment is today. Do you understand, waive and give up those rights so that your matter may be continued to April 29th, 2026 as a 0 of 30 calendar days, with the understanding that your preliminary hearing may commence within 30 calendar days of April 29th?
Yeah.
And does counsel join in that waiver?
I do.
The court finds that
He seems to me very compos mentis. He's clear-eyed, he's blinking, he's not like in a daydream, he's focused on the judge. As I say, he was listening appropriately, answering appropriately. That alone speaks to Nick's ability to think and reason. Now, if he's able to behave in a courtroom and make rational decisions in a courtroom and in a jail cell, why not in his own home? Also, if this whole competency aspect isn't being sort of brought up, then what the heck is Nick's defense going to be other than wishful thinking? Meanwhile, some news outlets are pontificating on Nick's demeanor in court. This was page 6's view. Nick Reiner may have experienced a moment of elation while eerily smirking during his arraignment at a downtown Los Angeles courtroom on Monday. Body language expert Susan Constantine exclusively spoke with page 6 after Nick pleaded not guilty in connection to the stabbing deaths of his parents. There's a really interesting smirk where his head goes down and then he smiles, Constantine said, adding that he was trying to conceal his emotions by tilting his head downward. It's this moment here. Now, I suspect if Nick was smirking in court, I didn't actually see it. It's hard to see this photo out of context, but if he was, then perhaps it was out of a mild sense of amusement. We don't see him actually making eye contact with the camera. He must know that there's a camera on him. Courtrooms are quite intimate affairs. And perhaps he even felt a smidge of embarrassment, that he's the star of this particular show. He's wanted to be on camera. He's wanted to be in the headlines. He's wanted to follow up on Being Charlie with a documentary on another famous family member. Well, he's gotten what he wanted, hasn't he? By the way, based on this new hairstyle and based on where we see Nick looking down in this photo, does it seem to you that Nick might be going bald like his father? I can't actually make up my mind either way. In some photos, it looks like his hair's a little thinner, but in others it seems normal. What do you think? It is quite an important question because a guy going bald, especially in his 30s, is actually quite a personal crisis for a young man. It's something that affects his status. It's something that affects how women rank them, how women think of them, and how they think about themselves. But there is something smirky about Nick in general. If we look at some of the footage he's previously shot, just a sense that he seems to enjoy when the focus is on him. Now, although I think there's a place for body language analysis, I find the media are typically clueless in when they apply it. We also saw the so-called experts doing body language and statement analysis of Savannah Guthrie. That to me is incredibly inappropriate. Do you think she looks distressed? Duh, of course she does. Do you think she looks exhausted? Double duh. Nick's smirk, if that's even what it was, is a very shallow, superficial attempt at trying to fathom who Nick is. I think we get a far better and far deeper sense of Nick Reiner when we continue our conversation on enmeshment. Remember that. And more particularly, the antidote. What is the solution to enmeshment? Would you guys like me to go into that into some depth, Nick's psychology, but specifically the problem of enmeshment and its solution? Do let me know in the comments. Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.